everyone, my name is Key Light and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to get into our Sunday school lesson called Faith of Abraham. So today's scripture is going to come from Romans chapter 4 verse 1 through 12. And one thing I like about this particular Sunday school lesson, we're going to talk about the actual process of being circumcised, but we're going to hone it in and connect it with today's society and why it is so important that we sometimes remove and cut things to show proof of trust and faithfulness to God. So make sure you like, comment, and definitely subscribe. Let's get right into it. So just a little bit of background. Back in the day, in the Jewish tradition, and we'll also say in Christianity, the right thing to do in order to make a seal and a pact with God, you had to be circumcised. That kind of separated Jews versus Gentiles. Also, let's go ahead and connect it to the Muslim religion. In Muslim religion, it is mandatory for you to be circumcised. Now, in the Christianity religion, it is not mandatory for you to be circumcised, but it's honestly a pact, a seal of what you are going to remove to show your trust and your faithfulness. So what I want to ask you before we get into the first chunk of our lesson, who do you trust the most? Who do you have faith the most? Hopefully the first person that came to mind was God. And if it was an actual person, does the person have God within them? That person that you thought about, that you trust the most, do they have God within them? All right, let's get right into it. So first we're gonna get into Romans chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. And I always read the Message Translation Bible. So how do we fit what we know of Abraham, our first father in the faith, into the new way of looking at things? We're starting off with a question. If Abraham, by what he did for God to approve him, he would certainly have taken credit for it. But the story we're given is a God story, not an Abraham story. What we read in scripture is Abraham entered into what God was doing for him. And that was the turning point. He trusted God to set him right instead of trying to be right on his own. So we are going to connect this lesson to the OG, Abraham. Abraham always takes the credit and give it to God. And that's what this first chunk is about. Abraham, yes, he is the father of many sons, but it would not be possible if it was not for God. Abraham had to make a pact with God. He had to truly trust him, rely on him alone to see everything through. And we all know the song, the stories of Abraham, how he wanted children so bad with his wife. And it took them years later on in their lives to actually finally have children. But it was due to having trust and faith in God. Do you have that type of trust in God where sometimes you can't even see it? People might think that you're crazy. People might not even think that it could come true. But because you have faith in God, because you can see it through, because you can see it through with God and have trust in God, that it will come to fruition. It will manifest into reality. That's the kind of faith and trust that we need to have in God. We need to cut off any negativity and truly trust in him. So now we're going to go to Romans chapter 4, verse 4 through 5. If you're a hard worker and do a good job, you deserve your pay. We don't call your wages a gift, but if you see that the job is too big for you, that is something only God can do, and you trust him to do it, you could never do it for yourself, no matter how hard and long you worked. Well, that trusting him to do it is what you set right with God, by God, sheer gift. So I love this notion about how if we work really hard, we will see something through it. But even with us working so hard to get what we desire, what we need, and what we want, it is truly the only choice is through God. We are only able to see our dreams come true, the hard work pay off through God. What have you strived so hard for that you knew that you had to trust God in order to do it? Go ahead and comment down below. What is one thing that you knew it would not be possible if it were not for trusting in God and having faith, believing in something you cannot see yet, but trusting that God is going to work it out? Now we're gonna go to Romans chapter 4, verse 6 through 9. David confirms this way of looking at it, saying that the one who trusts God to do the putting everything right without insisting on having a say in it is one fortunate man. Fortunate those whose crimes are carted off, whose sins are wiped clean from the slate. Fortunate the person against whom the Lord does not keep score. Do you think for a minute that this blessing is only pronounced over those of us who keep our religious ways and are circumcised? Or do you think it's possible the blessing could be given to those who have never even heard of our ways, who were never brought up in the disciplines of God? We'll all agree, don't we, that it was by embracing what God did for him that Abraham was declared fit before God. So this chunk of scripture jumps to David, another iconic character in the Bible, where he once was a criminal, made bad choices, but he definitely rectified his wrongs due to trusting and having faith in God and believing that through God, all things are possible. So when we think about the procedure of being circumcised amongst males, of the process of removing a piece of the body in order to be sealed and packed with God, David recognizes that if you put aside, the negative thoughts, because that's a lot of the issues I think most of us deal with, our emotions. If we put aside, we remove the negative thoughts, we remove the negative people out of our life, and we remove the negative choices that we have once made and just trust in God, then everything will work itself out. And so essentially with this particular scripture, we have to understand that it's not enough just to have the procedure done. And it's not enough just for males to have this physical procedure done. We have to do the work and remove certain things out of our lives so that we can trust God more every single day. And trust is really a component that we have in all relationships, right? When we want to have relationships with people, one of the core components is, I need to be able to trust you. So if we can't trust God, how can we ever think that any other friendship, any other relationships can prosper? We have to work on that trust and that faith, building that trust with God so that everything else can just flow. And that's a day-to-day goal that we need to strive for. So now we're going to finish out with Romans chapter 4, verse 10 through 12. Now think, was that declaration made before or after he was marked by the covenant rite of circumcision? That's right, before he was marked. That means that he underwent circumcision as evidence and confirmation of what God has done long before to bring him into the acceptable standing with himself, an act of God he had embraced with his whole life. And it means further that Abraham is father of all people who embrace what God does for them while they are still on the outs with God, and yet unidentified as God in the uncircumcised condition. It is precisely these people in this condition who are called set right by God and with God. Abraham is also, of course, father of those who have undergone the religious rite of circumcision, not just because of the ritual, but because they were willing to live in the risky faith, embrace of God's actions for them, the way Abraham lived long before he was marked by circumcision. So that's a great way to end it. Abraham had been circumcised well before the physical procedure and surgery of removing the foreskin. He had already begun the process of removing negativity, removing negative thoughts out of his mind, making sure every day that he woke up and he had more positive thoughts. He found his joy. What is your joy for this week? What are you willing to remove that's negative? Is it a certain person? Are there certain friends? Are there certain relationships that you need to remove in order to trust God more and have faith? Do you need to create a balance in your life that you know that you need to make time for your personal life because you have been so successful in your work life? Creating that balance, cutting out negativity, having trust and faith, we need to do that every single day. And remember, find your joy. All right, you guys, I hope you all enjoyed this lesson. Until next time, love you guys.